Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1457B, and today's date is December 26, 2017, and the title of the episode is The Draining of the Swamp Nuclear Option Has Just Been Initiated. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, Trump created a new executive order. And when you're reading this new executive order, and let me just read the title of the executive order. Remember, a lot of these executive orders and a lot of these things that the government creates, it's not exactly what they are meant to be. It's just a title, and usually it means absolutely something completely different. Now, the executive order blocking the property of persons involved in serious human rights abuse or corruption. Now, what's very interesting about this executive order, and this executive order might be used to drain the swamp, and it looks like this is what it might have been created for, because when you read it, you need to start thinking about Hillary, you need to start thinking about McCain, pedophilia, and the rest, child trafficking, and the rest. Now, the executive order is presented as a national emergency up front, right in the beginning. And at first, it reads like he's going after foreigners, which are named directly in an annex at the end. And when you read on further in this executive order, that's not what this really is. Now, this executive order is what Americans were asking for. They were asking to drain the swamp. Now, when I read this, I want you to think of the Uranium One deal, child trafficking, all the organizations that they created to accept donations like McCain and all this stuff, foreign governments intertwining with U.S. citizens, paying them off to do their deeds or to have votes done. Now, you need to understand that he created this, and when we go through this, it really applies to those people, but you can judge for yourself. Now, here's a part, this is Section 3. Any person determined by the Secretary of the Treasury in consultation with the Secretary of State and the Attorney General, A, to have materially assisted, sponsored, or provided financial material or technological support for or goods or services to or in support of, number 1, any activity described in subsections 2A, 2B1, 2B2 of this section that is conducted by a foreign person. Any person whose property and interest in property are blocked pursuant to this order, or, number 3, any entity, including any government entity that has engaged in or whose members have engaged in any of the activities described in other subsections, where the activity is conducted by a foreign person, to be owned or controlled by, or to have acted or purported to act for or on behalf of, directly or indirectly, any person whose property and interests in property are blocked pursuant to this order, to have attempted to engage in any of the activities described in subsections or of this subsection. Section 3, I hereby determine that the making of donations of the types of articles specified in Section 203b2 of IEEPA, or by to or for the benefit of any person whose property and interests in property are blocked pursuant to this order, which seriously impair my ability to deal with the national emergency declared in this order, and I hereby prohibit such donations as provided by Section 1 of this order. Section 4. The prohibitions in Section 1 include the making of any contribution or provisions of funds, goods, or services by or for the benefit of any person whose property and interest in property are blocked pursuant to this order, the receipt of any contribution or provisions of funds, goods, or services from any such persons, any transactions that evades or avoids, has the purpose of evading or avoiding, causes a violation, or attempts to violate any of the prohibitions set forth in this order is prohibited. Any conspiracy formed to violate any of the prohibitions set forth in this order is prohibited. For the purpose of this order, The term person means an individual or entity. The term entity means a partnership, association, trust, joint venture, corporation, subgroup, or other organizations. The term United States person means any United States citizen, permanent resident, alien, entity organized under the laws of the United States, or any jurisdiction within the United States, or any person in the United States. And when you read this, and you think of all those people that have their foundations, those people that have dealt with foreign governments, those people who have benefited by selling certain things, this looks like this is really set up to go after those individuals. And we can see it's instructing, and this is what the executive orders do, they instruct government officials to go after these type of people. And when we look at what has been happening with Fusion GPS, when we look what's been happening with the Uranium One deal, when we look at the child trafficking, the pedo ring, and everything else, you can see this was set up purposely to go after those individuals. And it's just not foreigners, it's United States persons. Anyone in the United States. So is this the call to go after those individuals now? It's starting to look that way. We see that U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley. Well, it looks like she failed the important geopolitical test, and it looks like she's just going along with anything that anyone says about Russia interfering with elections. Now, there are two Russian comedians. They're known as Vovan and Lexus, and they placed a call to the United Nations where Nikki Haley is, and they spoke to Nikki Haley. There was a 22-minute long phone call, and it looks like they made up this land called Binomo, and they were talking to her, and they were saying that that Russia interfered with their election, and are you looking into this? And of course, Nikki Haley was saying that yes, we are looking into this, and this is nothing new. This is what Russia does, but this land doesn't even exist. Just listen to the phone call with the Russian comedians and Nikki Haley, and you'll get the gist.
Well, one more matter is island Binomo. It's not far from Vietnam in the South China Sea,
Okay.
Binomo?
Yes.
They declared independence.
Right.
They had elections, and we suppose Russia had its intervention.
Yes, of course they did. Absolutely.
And now this Binomo land makes the situation in the South China Sea even more tense.
And we're aware of that, and we've been watching that very closely, and I think we'll continue to watch that as we deal with the issues that keep coming up about the South China Sea.
So as you can see, she was completely fooled. She went along with it. She didn't even know that this wasn't a country. I mean, she should have said, listen, I don't know anything about this. Let me check on it for you. But instead, she went along with it, blaming Russia for something that she knew nothing about, that this didn't even exist. It was all made up. And you can see how all of it is complete and utter propaganda. And they can't even help themselves. They just want to continually move with the flow of fake news. And that's what they do. They use propaganda, fakeness to convince people. And this is someone calling in. She didn't know who these people were. And she went along with it without having any facts or anything to back what she was saying. And of course, at the end, she said she'll check on it. But she just went along with it. Now, out in North Korea, we see something very interesting happening here. South Korea is predicting, and believe me, when they say predicting, they're not predicting anything. They already know that North Korea is going to look to open negotiations with the United States in the year of 2018. They're saying that North Korea will seek negotiations with the United States while continuing to pursue its effort to be recognized as a nuclear country. And we see right now that something must have happened. There must have been a breakthrough with North Korea, with the secret talks that are happening behind the scenes, because South Korea is involved with this, China's involved, Russia's involved, the United States is involved. The only people that aren't involved is the cabal and the corporate media. That there must have been something that has been done here where they're going to get together and talk about something in 2018, where the United States is going to say, okay, North Korea is a nuclear state, and we're going to be talking peace. We're going to be, getting involved with this. Russia's going to get involved, South Korea, and we're going to see everything completely change. And the corporate media is not going to know. The cabal is not even going to know what to do with this. And we could see that we're heading in this direction. North Korea came out and they've demanded the U.S. to provide evidence that the Wannacryp ransom attack was engineered by North Korea. And they're saying that please show and present your evidence to prove that North Korea was behind this. Now, of course, what North Korea just did is they put the United States on the spot and the rest of the countries that are saying that North Korea did this, because now they're going to have to provide proof. And proof is not showing an IP address. Proof is showing the link that they actually created it and how they came about finding this and tracking it down. Because as we know, the CIA, it does have the ability to mimic pretty much anything and to make it look like it came from another country. We see right now that the Pentagon is finally admitting that yes, there are multiple ground operations in Yemen going back to 2015 when the war began. They've been telling us that no, the United States is not involved. We're just, helping out Saudi Arabia. But then we come to find out that yes, there's been troops in there all along, just like in Syria, just like in Iraq, just like in every other Ukraine, in every other country. There is always U.S. troops involved in this. It's covert operations. And again, remember what Nikki Haley was out there trying to prove, that Iran was behind everything out in Yemen, and she showed the missile and she made no case whatsoever, trying to convince the world, and the world didn't buy it. And now it's coming out that the United States is involved in the war in Yemen. The world is going to find out that the cabal is responsible for starving people, for killing people, for starting this war. And this is what they're most afraid of. And what we're seeing right now, we're starting to see the truth come out. We see the plan to get the Middle Eastern countries together to fight for a two-state type of solution. Well, it looks like it might be working, because Iran already, in their parliament, they passed a bill to recognize that part of Jerusalem is the Palestine capital. The other Middle Eastern countries are in there saying that, yes, we need to have a two-state type of solution, that the capital of Jerusalem is not for Israel. It belongs to Palestine also. And even the Pope is out there saying that we need a two-state solution in the Middle East for this peace process. Russia is out there saying, listen, we will handle this. We will go in. We will discuss it. We'll come up with a solution. And it looks like by having this done with Trump out there saying that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, the United States is backing away from this and letting other countries handle this process, because the United States, I don't think, is in a position to handle anything, because a lot of the congressmen, a lot of the people that are in Congress have been bought off by Israel, by other countries. They're corrupt. There's no way that they can push a peace process. And I think this solution, getting the Middle Eastern countries together, working together for a common solution, was the best way. And we'll have to see how this turns out. We see right now, Iraq right now is inviting companies to take part in a pipeline from Kirkuk all the way to Turkey. The old pipeline was destroyed with the Islamic State. They want to build a new one, and we can see that they are taking in bids to have this done. We see right now that there is no sign of recovery for Mosul, even though they beat the Islamic State there. The whole place is completely demolished. The infrastructure there, everything in Mosul, just like in Syria and many other places where the paid mercenaries were, it is a complete and utter disaster. The Syrian moderate rebels, they're rejecting the peace initiative led by Russia, Iran. They're saying we're not taking part of this. But really, at this point, they really have no leg to stand on, because they're beaten. They have no power in the country anymore. They are being pushed out of the country, and they really have no power. So whatever they say, and this is part of the cabal trying to convince everyone that they still have power, just like the Syrian opposition, they were out there saying that Assad cannot be the ruler. They have no say in this. Assad is the ruler. The people elected him. He brought in Russia. They beat the paid mercenaries. People are coming back to the country. Who do you think they're going to vote in? This is why Trump was out there saying, listen, he's there until 2021 or maybe even longer, depending on what the people do with him. Hands off of Syria. And it looks like this is what's happening. Syria is saying, we want the United States, we want the other coalition forces out. Australia already is removing a lot of its fighter planes from this region, from Iraq, from Syria. We're going to see a lot of the other coalition forces start to remove their equipment because the entire war in Syria is coming to an end. The coalition forces have no business whatsoever to be in this area, especially the United States, where they never had permission to be there in the first place. So what we're seeing is everything is coming to an end that the cabal has been pushing for many years. Now, this doesn't mean it has ended, because as you can see, they're still trying to push an agenda in Ukraine. We have McCain, we have Volker, we have many other out there pushing the idea that we need lethal weapons in Ukraine, because what they want to do is they want to get a war started there. Anywhere they can get a war started, that's all they need to start this whole thing out. All they need is to light the fuse. And this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to push this as hard as they possibly can. But what is happening at the same time is the truth is coming out. More evidence is coming out about the Uranium One deal, about Obama with the Iranian deal, with the spying on Trump, with what they've been doing over the many, many years, the $21 trillion that is just missing. And a lot of people are saying that this went to covert operations and it was funneled through the UN and then moved into certain areas to push these missions in these areas. A lot of people probably pocketed this money. And we can see that all of this is coming to an end, because once they start tracking all this down, a lot of these individuals are going to be in trouble. They're going to try to run to foreign countries. And then we come back to this executive order that Trump created, where they are allowed to go after these people no matter where they are, to look at their foundations, to look at what they've been doing, and bring them to justice. So we can see that time is ticking down for the cabal, and once again, they still have enough power, they still have power to create an event. They still have the corporate media. They're going to keep going until the very, very end, until they are arrested or killed or they create an event. They're never going to admit to anything. They're never going to give. They're even sitting there saying that the Trump dossier that they came out from Fusion GPS is still good, but there's no evidence backing it up. They have no proof of anything. They're still sticking by that whole thing. They're still sticking by the Russian collusion. They will never give up, because what they do is they lie, and then they lie on top of that, then they lie on top of that. They will never admit the truth. They will go down with the sinking ship lying. And we can see that the time has come where this entire economic system is falling apart. Everything the cabal tried to do to keep the system alive for them, not for the people, because it was just going to get a lot worse for the people, is completely falling apart right now. And there's nothing that they can do, because we can see already that the petro-yuan is coming into play. The petrodollar can no longer sustain anything, because they were expecting to get into Syria, then Iran, and keep the Middle Eastern countries, eventually get into Venezuela, have Ukraine, but all of it has fallen apart. You can't keep the system alive if all of this is falling apart. And the central bankers right now already have plans. They've had plans for a long time to move everything from the west to the east. It is happening right in front of everyone's eyes. If everyone just takes a moment to take a look, you can see how this has all been done over time. It just didn't happen. We're at the end stages of it, and when it does happen completely, people are going to be shocked, and they're going to say, where did this come from? They're not even going to know how this happened. Now, of course, what they're going to try to do is they're going to try to have some type of an event to cover it up, to say, okay, the U.S. is no longer a manufacturing powerhouse anymore after the event has occurred, after the war. Whatever they get done, we need to move our system to someplace else, and that is China. This is the play they're trying to make. This is their push. No matter what, we're going to be going through a transition. It just depends on how we get there and what the people do to maybe stop it, maybe to divert it, maybe to get rid of the central banks. But no matter what, we're going to go through this one way or another. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.